today I'd like to talk to you about nanotechnology, a little bit about what it is, where it came from, and then a vision about where it's going to go. So the National Nanotechnology Initiative was developed in 2000, launched by the US government, and it's a way of funding research in this area. And you can see the definition here of nanotechnology. What's really important here is not so much the wide array of phenomena that come out of this area, but really it's focused on the size scale we're talking about, the nanoscale. Potential applications cover just about every area of human endeavor that involve materials, things you can touch. And this is in the process of revolutionizing society in many different ways. And you can see the list here: medicine, industrial manufacturing, space exploration perhaps. All of these things are going to be impacted and are being impacted by nanotechnology. So what is nano? If we start out with the macro world that we're used to, where we see things, the small end of that is an ant, say. And if we go 1,000 times smaller than an ant, we get down to a red blood cell, perhaps. That's the micro world. Things that are too small to see with the naked eye, things that are way too small to manipulate with our fingers, that's the micro regime. But that's way bigger than the nano scale. We need to go another factor of 100 smaller than that to get into nano. Okay, and the nano world involves objects that are far smaller than the blood vessel or the blood cell. And actually the biological machinery inside the cell is what we're talking about. Large proteins, for example. Now this is of course extremely tiny unless you're a chemist. For a chemist like myself, the nanoscale is very large because we're used to dealing with small molecules that are a fraction of a nanometer up to maybe a couple of nanometers. And so to think about nanotechnology, for us, that's assembling large numbers of small molecules. So nanotechnology, the sort of the vision probably came out of some lectures given by Richard Feynman, quite a famous physicist, around 1960. And he gave a lecture called "There's Plenty of Room at the Bottom." Most of that lecture was focused on the ability to pack more information into smaller space. And of course, in the half century or so since that time, this has of course led to the development of our computer technology, of our iPhones, and so forth. But he also speculated on some other things, some nano robots. He talked about swallowing the doctor, little machines that you could eat by the millions, and they would flow around in your blood vessels and perhaps clean out the plaque from your arteries from eating too many hamburgers. And had a vision of how this might be done, and also some cautions about how difficult it might be. Now, stepping forward in time, this guy probably popularized the idea of nanotechnology and maybe even invented the word nanotechnology, Erich Drexler. And Drexler has written a few books. He popularized the idea. He's also provided some schematics. He doesn't do wet chemistry himself or wet science, but he made some schematics on how pumps or gears or other types of mechanical devices might be scaled way down so that, for example, in this picture you see individual atoms placed strategically to generate a gear. So he talked about how this might be done. He talked a little bit about the social implications of this, and he also talked about the dark side. And I don't think he's too worried about flesh-eating nanorobots, but there are potentially some downsides and misuse of technology. Now, these ideas have been taken up by society in many different ways, and also by the governments. That's what led to the funding of the National Nanoscience Institute, and also in some of the professional journals. And so this appeared in a dental journal, this idea of a nanoprobe. And this isn't the swallow a doctor, it's gargle a dentist, I think. And so the idea would be that you'd take a little mouthwash, and these little nanorobots would go around and they'd clean the plaque off your teeth and maybe repair some fissures in your teeth. And you see that this thing looks a lot like a NASA space probe. It's got hydraulics and external sensors on board, computers. I don't know what the power source is. I'm hoping it's not a nuclear reactor. But the question is not whether this kind of thing is ever going to be possible. It may violate some of the laws of chemistry and physics, but whether we should be using this sort of a strategy as a design. And I would suggest we don't want to do that. follows sort of some of the problems that we have in material science is that we tend to over-engineer things. We make them far more robust than they need to be. For example, the plastic bag that you get from the grocery store, that has a functional lifetime of maybe 30 minutes while you carry your grocery home, but the thing will persist in the environment for decades. That's not really the way we want to do it in a sustainable world. What we really need to do in our design strategy is to go with biomimicry. We need to turn to biology, which actually is where some of the most intriguing nanomachines already exist. Okay? Let's use that as a model. And this is what I mean. Let me give you some examples from my research group. This is a schematic of a liposome. A liposome is like a cell wall that you saw in the previous slide, made up of lipids. Lipids have a polar head group, something that likes water, and a greasy tail that doesn't like water. And when you put those into water, they will self-assemble into this sphere. The spheres that we use are about 100 nanometers in diameter and about 6 nanometers in width of the wall. Okay? And I would suggest to you that this is the platform for a nanomachine. Okay? It doesn't look like a machine, but in fact it will have many of the same characteristics of the machine that you saw earlier, the mechanical thing that you might think about when you talk machines. But it has some features that are more important, like it will biodegrade just like any other biological system. Okay? So here's what we can do with it. We can put stuff in the middle. We can put drugs in the middle and use this as a nano carrier to deliver drugs to a tumor cell, for example. We can put imaging agents to help contrast in MRIs. We can put perhaps magnets in there and move these things around with an external magnetic field. Now we can also change the outside of this, change the exterior. Okay, and this is where we put a sugar on there, an antibody, a little bit of DNA maybe, and we can direct where this thing goes and how it interacts with its environment. In our particular case, what we like to do is to put something that's not found in nature, make a polymer string around the liposome. This gives it color. When we first make them, the things are blue. But when they encounter a stress, they turn from blue to red. Okay? And that stress can be many different things depending on the decoration on the outside. In our particular case, we're interested in decorating it so that they interact with bacteria, specifically bacteria that cause foodborne illnesses, E. coli and so forth. And so you see from the slide here, the original blue color changes to red depending on what sort of bacteria is present. We're working with food companies in food processing plants to help to minimize the risk of foodborne diseases coming out of those facilities. All right, so I want to finish up by talking about a hero of mine, Roald Hoffmann. He's not only a Nobel Prize laureate in chemistry, but also a philosopher, a poet, and a playwright. And this is his take on nanotechnology. And I think you can see that he describes some of the features we've been talking about, the precision engineering, and he gets a sense of the beauty behind the thing. But his final line, which I think is a take-home message here, is that nanotechnology should be inherently benign by design. That's where the future lies of nanotechnology. Thank you.